And good morning to you, beautiful people of the center. As you heard from our host this morning, we're starting a new focus for February, the power of meditation. And the way we selected our focuses for each of the months this year was we looked around for books, spiritual books that had the words "the power of" or "power" in the title, so that we could have a year of books that guided us through the power of spiritual living. And I'm very grateful that my book, The Power of Meditation, is the recommended reading for this month. And the publishers gave it the subtitle, "An Ancient Technique to Access Your Inner Power." And I was very glad that they did that, because it's a very accurate description of what meditation is about for me. The idea that there is this inner something that is already there, that we don't have to generate, but we're looking to go there, to travel to it and to dwell in it. That's what meditation is all about. There's no stress involved in generating this inner presence. We're discovering it together. In fact, there's so many myths about what meditation is and what meditation isn't, that today I hope to explore some of those myths and see if we can reframe some of them. On Deepak Chopra's website, there is a myth that I think is a good one to start with. It's on the first slide, and the myth is that you have to quiet your mind to have a proper meditation experience, which some of you already know might disqualify you from meditation altogether. And indeed, I want to tell you a little bit about how I got to write the book. The publishers approached me and said, "Would you please write a book?" And I said, "Certainly, if Penguin asks you to write a book, the answer is yes." So I said, "What's the topic?" And they said, "Meditation." And I said, "What? Why me?" Because I didn't identify myself as an expert in meditation. I identified myself as somebody who struggled with a busy mind. And I asked them, why did they select me? And they said, "Well, that's what you're known for." And I was, "What?" And I realized what they were talking about was the journey of discovery that I'd been through, and how I had dealt with my busy mind and helped other people to find a way to deal with their own busy mind through all the years of teaching. And really what I found along the way of exploring meditation is that each one of us has to discover our own way to do it. And there really isn't one size that fits all people for meditation, but there certainly is a way for you to meditate, and you can still have an incredible experience of meditation, even if you have a very busy mind, a very agitated mind, a very creative mind, a very disturbed mind. You can still have an experience of meditation that is available for us. And so I used quotes from the Bhagavad Gita to help along the way, because that's one of my most favorite scriptures. And in it are all these guidelines and gentle pointers for how we are to understand meditation. And the first one on the next slide is an instruction from Krishna saying that little by little, through patience and repetition, the mind will become stilled in the self. And I chose that one to start with because it has the clue in it for how to approach meditation. First of all, it says that we'll become stilled in the self. You notice it's a capital S. So it's not talking about my ego. It's talking about that thing which in the Center for Spiritual Living's teaching we'd call the thing itself. That thing that is already there, that is already deep peace, that is everywhere present, that is eternal, that is undisturbed, the platform upon which our whole life rests. So through gentleness and repetition, we land in that. Not through force and pushing do we come to something. It's a very gentle process, meditation. That's one of the keys, to be gentle and patient and to abandon unrealistic expectations for what you're going to get out of it. Sometimes people like to put all of their eggs in one basket. Like, I'm going to meditate myself into rightness. I like to remember that actually meditation is just one spoke in a wheel of a whole comprehensive program of spiritual practices, which we looked at last year, right? I mean, some people say, I meditated for 17 years and I didn't get much out of it. I wonder if they were doing any of the other things, like selfless service, like study, like circulation, like prayer, like all the other things that work together in a symbiotic way. So, meditation is really important, but it's part of a big program. And yet I notice of all of the things to do in a spiritual life, meditation is the one, if I get the chance, that I will avoid. So I know I have to give my attention to it gently and learn how to do it. So rather than thinking of disciplining myself to produce a quiet mind, I have to reframe it. Instead, what I'm doing is peeling away and uncovering that which is already, always, permanently present. That's what I'm doing. I'm peeling it away. So another key, abandon perfection right from the start. You might notice that when you do your meditation, you keep your appointment, and through the whole time that you set aside for your meditation, you've been thinking the whole way through it. Let that be okay, because there is a certain amount of benefit from just sitting there. You know, I learned that a long time ago, and I was reminded of it by a friend, because recently I was complaining about still being jet lagged. So I spent a whole month in another time zone, and so come 3 a.m., I'm wide awake. I can do anything at 3 a.m., but during the day, I can barely keep my eyes open. So when my eyes pop open at 3 a.m., I was telling a friend about it, and he gave me this excellent advice. He said, just stay there in bed with your eyes closed as if you were sound asleep, and act as if you were asleep. It was very helpful. You know, because my mind wants to urge me to get up, do things. It tells me, you're bored, you need to think. It goes on and on. So I learned to act as if I was actually sleeping, and it reminded me that this is also true of meditation. Act as if you are meditating, right? Just keep the appointment and sit there. And then you notice this beautiful thing happens. You realize that in the presence of your restless mind telling you, I'm bored, I don't want to be here, you don't have to respond to it. It's amazing. In fact, one of my teachers said, and notice that when you feel the urge to scratch, to adjust your glasses, to move your body, that you can survive not responding to it. I never knew that. So I just sat and let myself become aware of what was passing through me, and just sat and acted as if I was meditating. And then over time, I noticed that I was experiencing something very beautiful, which I'll talk about. But first, let's talk about the next myth. There it is. Meditation is difficult to do. Well, stated more accurately, meditation is difficult to do if you try to do it in a way that isn't right for you. Then you struggle with it. You know, and that's just the way of life. I mean, life is like that. You and I are to find the authentic way for our own life's expression and embrace that rather than mimicking somebody else, right? I always run into trouble when I try to be like somebody else rather than finding my way to do it. Even communication styles, I have to find my way to do it, and you have to find your way to do it. I was thinking about that recently because a friend of mine, he has a very direct, blunt, and is very effective in his communication. He says something like it is. But whenever I try to communicate like that, I notice that it comes across rude, and it alienates people. And if he tries to communicate like me, he seems and feels ineffective. So we each have to be our own true person, and it is the same with meditation. In the Gita, Prince Arjuna is listening to Krishna describe meditation and the lofty consciousness, and he's just getting depressed. He's like, I am not going to be able to do this, like some of us do when we hear other people's experience. And he says these beautiful words on the next slide. He says, oh, Krishna, the stillness of divine union which you describe, it's beyond comprehension. How can the mind, which is so restless, attain lasting peace. The mind is turbulent. Trying to control it is like trying to tame the wind. It's a very famous line in the Gita, and it speaks to us of the difficulty we perceive in trying to control our mind. And then in the gentle way of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, well, there's options. There's many paths. There are many ways, and that's what I love about it, is it shows that there's no one size fits all. There are ways that we can each approach the divine that work for us. And if the Bhagavad Gita is something you've never been able to read and you want a gentle, easy introduction, if you go onto Amazon and you search for my name, you'll see there is an introduction for Westerners in plain language. It's 99 cents. It's a way for you to really find your way through the Bhagavad Gita and learn to love this beautiful, timeless classic. One of the readers of this The Power for Meditation book wrote to me and said, I was so relieved when I read the book, especially the part that presents journaling as a meditative practice, and the part that presents making a cup of tea as a mindfulness practice. She said, because I realized I had been judging myself. I didn't think that these things I was doing were already meditative practices. I had this ideal that I was comparing to myself to, but now I've relaxed and I've allowed myself to broaden the definition of what meditation is. So that's the key. It depends on what you think meditation is supposed to be. It may be that it's more broader than you've allowed it to be up until now. There might be room for some flexibility. Here's a list of things that make meditation difficult, more difficult than it has to be. Number one, we've heard already, trying too hard to focus when the mind doesn't want to. See, rather, let it roam until it doesn't anymore. Just watch. Isn't that something? Here's another point of difficulty. Being attached to unreasonable results. I'm going to meditate hard until this situation is fixed. Rather, approach meditation as an explorer. Then you come to meditation and it can give you what it's capable of giving, rather than going to meditation to demand it give you something that's from your preconceived idea. You come to meditation as a guest and see what it gives. Third, comparing your experience to other people's experiences. Instead, experiment. Try different methods. Be flexible. And lastly, giving up too soon. I've heard it said that a new habit takes about 30 to 40 days of consistent repetition before it settles into us. We human beings need that length of time for it to be settled. So it's not only in meditation that this is a setback. It's in diets, it's in going to the gym, it's in learning a new language. Unless we give it a chance, it won't take. It's the same thing in meditation. Oh, and by the way, if you do go to Sunday night service tonight, you'll hear Susan Robinson speaking about a school in San Francisco where the whole school meditates twice a day at the sound of a gong, and she's going to tell about the impact that has had on the students' scores and their ability to concentrate and deal with their life. Very interesting. Next myth on the next slide. Meditation is something you do to relax. Well, I was telling a friend of mine about all the benefits of meditating and saying affirmations and saying prayers, and he said to me, well, is it something I can do while I'm working out at the gym? And it was a sincere question, and it gave me the opportunity to talk about the different kinds of activities and their effects. There are all kinds of different activities, each with their own benefit, right? There are activities that are designed to relax us. I like how one meditation teacher explained the difference between the two. This is what it says. We meditate to tune in, not to tune out. Isn't that helpful? Because there are certain exercises like watching TV, taking the dog for a walk, running around the park that may or may not be relaxing, and they may or may not lead to tuning in. Only you know. I think some of it depends on how much of your physical, mental, emotion, energy is engaged. Like in watching TV, it usually grabs your attention and takes it out into the realm of imagination, somebody else's imagination. Or like walking the dog, some of your attention might be in taking care of that relationship and keeping on the path, or whatever it is. These are helpful, wonderful experiences, but whether or not they lead to tuning in, you have to decide. You have to find out. It is true, on the other hand, that meditation is better when you and I are relaxed. So if you do one of those activities and arrive at a relaxed state, then meditation becomes about carving out the time for us to look with inner gaze at that aspect of ourself that is timeless, ageless. That awareness, that consciousness within that connects us to everything in all time zones. To dwell in that awareness is a very important part of the teaching of the Center for Spiritual Living, that we come to know what is at the heart of our beings. The next myth on the next slide is meditation takes time, and I don't have it. We just started teaching the Beyond Limits class last week on Tuesday, and in that class, the homework for the first week's meditation practice is exactly the meditation that we did earlier, the one where you count a breath 1 in and silently count 2 as it goes out. That's as simple as the instructions are. So the student is to carve out 10 minutes every day and practice that. So usually when I demonstrate the method like I did this morning, I'll take about 4 minutes to show how the students are to do it. And often it is the case that people will come to me at the break and say, my goodness, that meditation that we did at the beginning of class, how long was it? Because it seems sometimes that when we are in that state, that time shifts. Things move around. And we only used 4 minutes in the class to do something that has a deep effect. And in the class, you can feel the moment when the whole room moves, like a gear moving into place, into silence. A silence that is deeper than simply sitting still and paying attention. A beautiful feeling. You can feel the moment. My personal experience of time and meditation is that with meditation, I seem to have more time to live my life. Without meditation, I seem to never have enough time to do what is mine to do. That's just my personal experience. Someone once said that meditation for them is like attending to the alignment of your car. And I understood that because I used to have an old Ford Mustang a long time ago when I was a young man. Remember the boxy bodies? I just loved it. But at one point, the alignment went out, and I didn't attend to it. So although if you start to list to one side, you know how that goes. And if I wanted to go straight, I had to turn slightly to the right, and then it started to wobble, and the journey became less and less safe, and also kind of, I used up more resources to handle all of the conflicting things, and it occurred to me that that's what meditation is like. It attends to the realignment of the vehicle, because it brings things into a place so that my attention is not being drawn upon to handle the veering and the shaking. There is a smoother ride as a result of meditation. The last myth I'd like to address for today on the next slide is this one. When I meditate, I'm supposed to have an otherworldly, extraordinary, enlightened, through the roof connected experience. Whereas more often, the experience of meditation, and this is certainly true of my personal experience, is that it is a very natural, a very normal experience. It's more like meeting an old friend that you've known for a long time, but you haven't seen them. Then when you do meet them again, everything you know about them comes to your awareness and you remember, and you're comfortable in that feeling, in that experience. And then the important thing is that that experience of being in meditation or with your friend, it lingers with you for the rest of the day. That's the real gem, that it stays with you. It informs the rest of your day. While I was in Bali, traveling around, every morning we got up at 7:30 and we used mala beads. There are 108 beads on here. And we would say the Gayatri mantra. It's one of the world's most ancient prayers. We'd say it 108 times. And one of the travelers said that she got her own Gayatri, her own mantra beads, mala beads, and is now saying the Gayatri mantra every morning. But here's the thing. She notices now that during the rest of the day, when an unsettling situation rises up, she just has to touch the beads. And it reminds her of the state that she visited in the chanting. See, because chanting is a form of meditation where you give your mind, the troubled mind, the busy mind, something to hold on to. And then when done over time, it creates a reference point because you know where to go and how to get there. And sometimes all you need to do is just think about it, and you can return to center. One of the gentlemen on the tour is a very gregarious, loud, outspoken, verbal, so full of energy. I thought he would never settle down into the meditation experience. And then I noticed that he didn't miss one of the chanting experiences, and I asked him about it. And he said to me, I have not experienced the quiet I experienced in the chanting experience in any other spiritual practice I've ever been instructed in. And he told me then, he said, my partner and I now wake up every single morning at 7:30 a.m. for a half an hour of chanting, and it's radically shifted the tone of my life. It's informing the rest of my day. It's what he said. It's like getting a gold star. And chanting doesn't have to be in Sanskrit, the Gayatri mantra. You can use beads simply because they're a counting device. And you can say a single word slowly, mindfully, like love, 108 times, and see the effect that it has on you. It's very similar to counting in and out. Or other options, affirmations or words that mean something to you, prayers, it doesn't really matter. It's just using this method to go to a place of stillness that is more natural than the anxious thinking that the popular media describes for us. Everything is so exaggerated these days that sometimes the expectations that are projected on meditation are so out there that they belong more in the world of the movies, I like to reframe it. Meditation is a natural and beautiful experience. And it may indeed include intense feelings and insights, but they're not the sole purpose of the practice. More importantly to the practice of meditation is what happens next, afterwards, in the rest of our life. How does it contribute to the way we talk to each other, the habits we develop, the things we do, the way we contribute to the world? And that's the focus of next week's message. What happens next? So I want to close with a little paragraph from my book. Without the balancing action of time spent alone in inner silence, separated from the stimuli of the world around us, it is difficult to maintain a confident sense of self. Constant exposure to people, noises, information can, if sustained without pause, contribute to behavior that is called being burned out. When you know how to, and frequently do, access alone time, You take advantage of an inner world in which your mental analysis and even your opinions and ideas can take a rest. In that interior world of silent, nurturing peace, I like to say, is where we encounter ourselves in the form of our undisturbed, innocent self. In other words, there is a frame of mind in which you are balanced, unpressured, not manipulated. And that frame of mind is available, it seems, when you are alone in your quietness. It is for that state of mind primarily that I meditate. So I invite you to breathe in with me, to exhale, letting your eyes close as we enjoy a moment of prayer together, as we each in our own way acknowledge divinity, that eternal presence, that constant, that is the underpinning of all of creation, of all existence, that which is eternal, without beginning and without end, that changeless reality out of which everything comes. And through this prayer, we acknowledge that this is the reality of our being. This is our dwelling place, our abode. We live and breathe and move and have our being, our thought and our lives within the one. And as we acknowledge this, it becomes easy and effortless for us to describe the truth of our being, the real me, the inward I is an inseparable part of this whole. And it is through my recognition of this that the outer becomes as the inner and my wholeness is revealed. I give thanks for this awareness, and I release this word of prayer into that aspect of the universe we call the law of mind, as a reminder to hold it all gently, without effort and strain, so that we may become easily and directly acquainted with the truth of our being. And together we say, and so it is.